Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenitria Williams, and I have with me the very talented, intelligent, sophisticated Miss Celia Anderson. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, if you know me, you know that I think that Celia is like a really amazing mom, and I've been watching from a distance. We're not super close, but from a distance, if she's putting something out, I'm trying to learn from it and grow because I think we learn from people who, there's a book that says success leaves clues, and I always try to pick up those clues when successful people are leaving them. And so I wanted to bring Celia on to discuss parenting and mental health. So Celia, welcome to the broadcast. Can you tell us more about you and kind of your journey of how you got to where you are? Not even parenting, just kind of how you got to where you are career-wise and in life.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, it is a pleasure to be here, always ready and willing to talk about this topic in particular because parenting is the most important thing that I think I do in my life. However, career wise, I am a former athlete. I played basketball at the University of Arkansas. I played overseas for a couple of seasons. I went back to grad school. I had a daughter while I was in grad school, and then my career journey, believe it or not, has kind of been centered around motherhood. So the choices that I made career wise in my life were always done intentionally with my daughter in mind. So currently, I am the Senior Director of Business Development for the Greater Columbus Sports Commission in Columbus, Ohio. And that was a decision that was made to move to Columbus because of what it allowed for me to do for my daughter. So if I had to say my career journey has just been a series of me making decisions that are best for her life, honestly.
Let me ask you, has there ever been a sense of resentment or a sense of frustration because, I had to put my journey on hold, or was it always I'm honored or kind of a privileged perspective from that?
I like to call it a beautiful sacrifice.
Mm.
So it for me the sacrifice was always beautiful, and I was never really I never resented the fact, there was a point in time where I had an offer at a very young age to make over six figures for a corporation. And I had to say no. And I had to say no because I was a single mom, and the time that they wanted from me, I couldn't necessarily give them and be the mother that I wanted to be to my daughter. And no, I did not resent turning down that job at all because I firmly believe that my daughter is a gift from God. He gave
Mhm.
her to me, and that she is my first priority. So, no, I call it just a series of beautiful sacrifices. And now that we're on this end of it, and she's 19 years old, all of those things that we sowed, she's now reaping. And so, no, I have no regrets.
So for the people that don't know, I follow you and your child because I think both of you are really amazing. Tell us some of the amazing things that your daughter has going on in her life so that people can kind of get an understanding of, whoa, okay, this is what we're talking about when we say these sacrifices are, you're seeing the benefits and you're reaping that beautiful harvest from those sacrifices.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, my daughter is, I think she blows me away every single day. She is the most, first of all, genuine, kind, sincere person that you'll ever meet in your life. She just has this foundation of character that I think is amazing. And on top of that foundation, she's built all of these accomplishments. She is a freshman at Harvard University. She plays on the women's basketball team. She also owns her own company, Graffiti by Gabby, which she started when she was 16 years old. And we're going into what is this, our fourth year with Graffiti by Gabby. She is also Miss Gahanna Teen USA and will be competing in the Ohio Teen USA pageant in May. Um, I think that's about it.
Well, I don't want to downplay Gabby because not only does she have this company, Gabby has been featured in different on different TV shows and different magazines and those types of things because she's doing shoes and different art for some pretty, what I guess you would say, high profile people and teams and all of those things. And so every time I see her, I'm just like, I'm so proud, as if I had anything to do with it. I had nothing to do with her success except for praying for her, sending her love that she didn't know was there, So um, I just want to say I'm so very proud of her, and again, very proud of you for watching those sacrifices. What were some of the things, because you talked about intentionality, what were some of the things that you were really intentional about instilling in her as far as teaching her to have that foundation of character that you talked about?
Listen, we can talk about this all day long because I believe in intentional parenting. When I got pregnant with Gabrielle, I was 24 years old and I hadn't even thought about having a child. Like, I think the best thing that happened to me is that I was given a baby shower by all of my grad school professors. And so it wasn't the kind of shower where you play baby
Yeah.
shower games and that kind of stuff. They went around in a circle. They all sat around me and they all gave me their best parenting advice. And they told me things
Mm.
that I hadn't necessarily thought about. Like, one piece of advice was teach your child how to reason, how to think for themselves. Now, how you do that is going to be up to you and your child, but be
Mhm.
sure that her having great reasoning skills is a goal. And someone else said, um, allow her gifts to grow. Whatever those gifts
Mhm.
are, allow them to grow, and that they will show you their gifts very early on. You just have to recognize them and allow them to grow. And then I think the last one that I remember distinctly was be sure that she is a confident woman, a confident girl, because I think she said that so often in girls, we ruin their confidence early on. And so
Mhm.
I went back home, with this child in my belly, and I really started to think about what kind of parent I wanted to be. And
Mhm.
so then when she got here, I kind of I knew I wanted a foundation of education. So I started asking questions. What is my job as her mom to ensure that she gets the education that I think she deserves?
Mhm.
So I started doing things at home. On her wall in her room, when I decorated her room, I put the alphabet on the wall. Her room pretty much looked like a kindergarten classroom from the very, very beginning. In the car, I would put coins and clocks on the headrests so that she could
Mhm.
look at it every single day. So it was just kind of those little things that talked about education. And then as far as character building, we have this big thing in that we believe that God truly requires two things of us: A, for us to have an horizontal relationship with other people, and B, to have a vertical
Right.
relationship with him. And to me, that's pretty much sums it up. So we were always constantly in our house talking about how we treat other people.
Mhm.
So if she was in the classroom and some other child was going through something, I would say, well, Gabrielle, what did you do in that situation?
Mhm.
And the idea that sometimes people don't need your criticism, they need you to lift them up. So
Right.
that was another thing that I did. And then as far as her talents and allowing her talents to grow, I didn't have any rules in my house around what she could do with her art. If she wanted to
Mhm.
paint on a wall, we painted on a wall, you know, because in my mind, in order to get rid of whatever she put on the wall, it was a $30 can of paint, you
Mm.
know, that I could just paint over. So she was always allowed to draw on the walls. She was allowed to to experience the art side of her as much as she could experience the sports side of her. So
Mhm.
oftentimes we would be in the car going to AAU tournaments, and we would stop at a Barnes and Noble and buy a new sketchbook. So she would be drawing
Yeah.
in the car on the way to an AAU tournament, you know. So I just really kind of tried to feed her passions and to let her take the lead on
Mhm.
what she was good at, and then to figure out as a parent, how do I enhance those things.
Okay. Tell me at what point or at any point that you saw Gabrielle struggle with confidence issues or any type of issue that could later on, even anxiety, with doing different things, how you handled those things and how you gave language to that.
Oh, wow. So another part of her education was me always finding spaces that offered the best education possible. So if that meant it was a public school, a private school, a boarding school, and she's been to all three, by the way, whatever kind of school that meant, I was going to find what I thought was going to be the best situation for her. Like for me, my zip code didn't dictate where she was going to go to school, you know, and so when we were living in Little Rock, she ended up at a private school that was great for elementary. But when we got to middle school, there were just a few struggles because I think what happens after elementary and kids get into middle school, the learning becomes less about them getting a foundation of math um, and reading and all of those things, and more about this social education.
Hmm.
You know, the kids start to try to figure out who they are.
Hmm.
And then oftentimes the kids will come to school with, their parents' ideas or whatever. I mean, they're middle school, they don't really know. And so I think for a while there, because she was in a majority white space, that we really had to talk through what it means to be a little Black girl, to be authentic to yourself, and to be in an environment that's not necessarily
Hmm.
supportive of that narrative. And so we spent her entire seventh grade year working through microaggressions, which
Hmm.
is, not something that you would typically have conversation with
Right.
a 13-year-old. But Gabby came home one day and she said, Mom, I think my teacher's racist. And I said, wait, hold up. Before we go racist, let's talk
Right.
about what was happening. And what was happening um, really was she felt like her teacher thought the boys were smarter than the girls.
Mm.
And so I had to back up and say, well, baby, that's not racism. you know let's just talk about what is it that she's doing. And so she
Hmm.
gave me specific examples of what it was she thought she was doing. And then I explained to her, what implicit bias is. I mean, at 13 years old, I'm talking to her
Yeah.
like, I need you to understand that your teacher is not doing this on purpose. Maybe it's never been pointed
Hmm.
out to her before. So, we sat down, we talked to the teacher. It ended up being all good. But, so she's had challenges throughout her life in holding on to this idea that she can be brilliant, authentic, and Black all at the same time, no
Hmm.
matter what space she is in. And but I think strategically walking through those things in seventh grade, and then me consciously deciding that we were going to do something different so that she could have an environment that had this overarching umbrella of Black excellence that
Hmm.
could then enhance, so me deciding to do something different the next year really have all played into how successful she is on the campus of Harvard University. So,
That's really beautiful. Now, you talk about the intentionality you have with instilling things with her. Tell me about how you intentionally protect your own mental health through navigating your child through all of these things and being a single mom.
oh, listen. So I haven't always responded the best in these situations. So I'm giving you some really, really positive examples, but don't let the master's degree fool you. I have gone left.
You know what? I think that's important for everybody to hear and know. It's not always the, oh, she was so together. So it's like, no, honey, It was
No, no,
always together.
yeah, there have been some, some situations that we've dealt with where I have just had to say, you will not treat my child that way. But
Mm.
as far as me, as my mental health, what I learned is that everything that I am going through in life is no different than what my mother went through, my grandmother went through, what my great grandmother went through. You know, as women, they're just natural stressors that are built into our lives. First of all, we are trying to juggle a lot. When you think about working, and even if you're married, two parent, I mean, both people are oftentimes are working in the Black
Hmm.
community. So you're working, you are trying to take care of the needs of your child. You're also taking care of the needs of your husband to some degree, but I won't speak too much on that because I don't have a husband. But we've always
Hmm.
juggled things, regardless of what kind of woman you are, whether you're married, whether you're unmarried.
Absolutely.
And I think that the difference between me, my mother, my grandmother has been our response to those situations. You
Mm.
know, my the way we respond in the Black community to stress is oftentimes we find our release hanging out with other people because we are very connected
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
So, my mom had a nightclub that she used to love to go to. And it wasn't until I got to be 40 years old that I realized that's how she relieved her stress.
Mm.
She got off work, she went to party. You know what I mean? Um, and then there were times that I would wake up in the middle of the night and my mom would be on the couch listening to Anita Baker, in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
And that was another way that she relieved her stress. My grandmother used to clean the house like nobody's business. She'd get up early in the morning. She'd start early in the morning.
Hmm.
By noon, everything smelled like bleach and mothballs. And that was the way she responded to her stress. So I just would like to point out that this is not new for the Black
Hmm.
community. How we respond to it, however, in my opinion, should progress.
Hmm.
There's lots of self medicating in our community.
Absolutely.
People drink. Now, marijuana is, of course, a lot of people's go to. I just choose to respond to stress differently. And the way that I respond to it, my coping mechanisms are I love hot yoga. I can't do hot yoga that well. Just it's like a big piece of ham just sitting there sweating and trying to move. But it's something about being
Mhm.
in that room and kind of within my thoughts that when I leave, I feel like it's a whole lot of tension that's taken
Mm.
off of my shoulders. I also seek community with other women who are like me.
Mhm.
So, while my mom loved to go to the nightclub and party dance, this, that, or whatever, I like to find other professional Black women who are single mothers that we can just kind of get together and we can talk through
Yeah.
things together. So, a few things. I mean, I also have a therapist, and I like to tell people that my faith is strong, but we are told that faith without works is dead. And so
Mhm.
for me, the two go together. I have a strong faith. I understand exactly what God needs for me to do. And then my therapist helps me work through the process of how to do it.
Mhm.
And I'm not afraid to admit that. It was the best money I've spent in a long time. So, and then the other thing, believe it or not, that takes stress from me is reading. So like if I'm going through something crazy, I will find a book that's about something totally opposite and just take my mind to another
Mhm.
place.
So I know you love reading. You're an
Mhm.
author. Um, you were selling books at an event. This was years ago, and my aunt who passed away several years ago, she got one of your books. And when I tell you she loved that book,
Oh,
Every time she would just talk, she's like, "Girl, I got that book at Pastor Sean's thing. It was so good. And that's my girl, Celia. I mean, she she always talked about you in such a fun way, like y'all hung out on the weekends, and I would be so tickled at her. She really, really loved your. I think it was the first book. It may have been the first
love
two.
Ocean, probably.
But she was just always. I was like, it was really good, but she'd be like, no, 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 you're not feeling it like I'm feeling it.
I'm so glad for you.
She would just brag about it all the time. So thank you for bringing so much joy to my aunt.
Oh, thank you for sharing that story. That book, my very first book, was Love Ocean, and that book never dies. I still have schools who read it every single year as a class set. It has been a catalyst to get kids who have never been to the library before to want to go to the library. I am so proud of that project.
Good, you should be. So I want to say, I know if someone's watching this, they may say, well, she got pregnant when she was in graduate school, which means she already has a degree, which means she's educated, she's whatever. What do you say to the parents who they may not have the same educational level and say, I can't do that because I'm not quote unquote as educated, or I can't do that because I don't have professors sitting around me giving me positive parenting advice? What would you say to those parents as far as the parenting aspect and how to take care of themselves throughout the parenting process?
Listen, I love that question. I love that question because I recognize that I did have some privilege. I come from four generations of single parent households. So my mother, when she had me and my sister, she did not have a degree. So she was working retail, she was working long hours, which presented a different set of challenges and a different set of circumstances from someone like me, who, well, very early on, I mean, fresh out of grad school, you don't really have you know, a job that's making a salary. But now I'm very fortunate. I have a job that pays me a salary. I only have to work during the daylight hours, so I do recognize that is a very, very real feeling. That's a very, very real question. But what I say to anybody that's a single mother is that while it may look different, in some aspects, the struggle is still the same. The struggle is still the same. And so while what I have in me works for me, whatever it is that you have in you
Mhm.
can also work for you. So just like I decided to write a book, for Gabby's first 3 years of her life. I pretty much supported her from my book income, my speaking income, and all of those kind of things. And being able to write a book doesn't require that you have a degree. It just requires that you have some sort of knowledge of
Mhm.
what it is that you want to do. So I would say to those women to look inside of themselves and to see what they have that gives them an advantage.
Mhm.
Because I would tell you, I've learned a lot from people who don't have degrees.
Mhm.
And there are opportunities out there for women who don't have degrees. You just have to search for them.
No, I love that. I was actually teaching a course. I was doing a Q&A for some women, and we were talking about some parenting issues at the time, and someone asked me something, and I explained some things, and he said, but you're a counselor, so you naturally know how to handle your child's emotions and all of those things. And she said, you're privileged, basically, with that background. And I said, yes. What if I told you that you were privileged? Because at the time I was not married. I said, what if I said you were privileged because you had a husband to help? And she paused, and I said, each one of us has privilege. We have to tap into that privilege because each one of us has a special thing on the inside of us that makes us capable of handling the assignment that we were given. And I think that's the thing, because oftentimes, and I wanted to bring that out because so many times people will look at someone and go, oh, well, she's this, and they dismiss their own superpower because they
Mhm.
only see your advantage, as opposed to saying, hey, I may not have the degree, but I can do this like nobody's business. I may not have a husband, but I can do this well. I may not have this thing, but I do have this. And so I would just challenge all of our, our viewers that to say, ask yourself, what do I have on the inside of me that gives me an advantage in this world, or gives me that ability to move forward, even in the midst of negative circumstances.
Well said.
So
Very well said.
yeah, I love that answer. Share any struggles that you've had with mental health issues.
Oh, ooh. So, my biggest struggle with mental health has probably been stress. Because whenever you're doing
Mhm.
something at a high level, and I operate at a high level, it's just who I am, there comes with a great deal of stress. So for me, if I'm working, whatever job I'm doing, I want to do it at a high level. If I am managing people, I want to manage them to the absolute best of my ability. So you couple doing your job at a high level to now I'm a mother. And if I'm going to be a mother, I'm going to be the best version of whatever mother there is
Mhm.
that could be. So now I'm parenting on a high level. And then in return, that produces a kid that operates on a high level.
Mhm.
And every time she comes home with a new venture or with a new idea,
Mhm.
that too falls into my plate. And so I think very early on, I had to learn how to juggle all of those things and how to handle the stress of those things without going to sleep. Because my response early on was, I don't want to deal with this. I am going to take a nap. And
Mhm.
that in a way is a form of depression. You know, when you have so much going on and you're just
Mhm.
like, I don't want to deal with any of it, I just want to go to sleep, that is a mental health
Mhm.
struggle. So for me, I had to learn how to be intrinsically and self motivated to do everything that I needed to do in a day and to do it well. So if I had to pick a mental health struggle, it was learning to deal with stress. There were a few years where I suffered from migraines
Mhm.
and never realized that the migraines were tied to the stress in my life. I don't know where I thought they came from. I just thought, oh man, now I got migraines. When did I start getting migraines? So
Mhm.
I had a CAT scan. I started taking migraine medicine, and it
Mhm.
wasn't until one day someone just said, well, maybe it's from stress. And I was like, can you get migraines from stress? I don't really, is that how that works?
Yeah.
And so once I figured that out and I started to learn to manage stress, life got to be a lot
Mhm.
easier. So now I'm able to operate still at a high level, but to
Mhm.
understand how to do so while managing the stressors of all of those different events.
No, I think that's so key, learning how to do that. Now, I also know you were, like you said earlier, you were a student athlete, and then you played after college as well. What were some of those lessons? I've heard you talk about those things before, just that athletics or being a part of a team, that whole experience taught you that you were able to implement in like your daily life.
Oh, yeah. So, playing sports in college and throughout my high school years certainly offered me a lot of transferable skills. You know, because as a student athlete, you're juggling a lot. You know, you have to go to class, you have to go to practice, you have to do all of those kind of things. That was the first place where I learned what capacity was, where
Mm.
I figured out that I could operate at a higher capacity than I had ever operated before in life. Because when you get on college campus as an athlete, I don't think people realize just how much it takes, you know,
Mhm.
especially within that freshman year, you know, because now all of a sudden you're part of a team. So you have a duty to that team, and your duty to that team is not just to be a player. You have a duty to help recruit new players. So that means when you have recruiting weekends, you are hosting recruits and you know you are on. You also have a duty to help get people in the stands. So that's why you're doing out in the community, you're doing the community service, you're
Mhm.
speaking at the Rotary Club luncheons, you're doing all of those things to help fill the stands. Then you have a duty to your actual team. That means performing to the best of your ability, showing up at your practices, understanding how to build relationships with your teammates in a way that creates a positive culture. And then you've got to understand how to build a relationship up the ladder with your coaches. Now, these are all things that I understand perfectly clearly now, but when I was going through them,
Right.
I didn't know that I understood them. But I understand them perfectly clearly now. But that first year of college, in which I made a whole lot of mistakes, and then that second year, I made a few more. But by the time I got to my junior year, I started to figure it out a little bit. And so now in my adult life, I can look back and I can say, that is the first opportunity that I have had to operate kind of in this microcosm of being an adult, you
Mhm.
know? And so all of those transferable skills. So now when I'm in my job, my teammates are now my coworkers, my
Mhm.
coaches are now my CEO, and all of the people above me, and because I work in business development and at the sports commission, my job is to not fill seats anymore, but to bring sporting events to my city, and then being in the community and speaking to people is kind of what I do for a living. So it's
Mm.
just a lot of transferable skills. I also learned from college basketball how to lose on Thursday and play again on Sunday. You
Oh,
know,
that's good.
I learned that things are temporary. And so I don't really dwell a whole lot. I'm not really a very emotionally driven person. I'm driven a lot by not by logic. And so I don't dwell a whole lot. When things go wrong, it's like, yeah, so I lost today, but I just might win tomorrow because I had years and years and years of proof of
Mhm.
that. You could be ranked, not ranked at all at the beginning of the year, and then win a championship at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So um, I would also like to say, um, when I had Gabrielle, I went through an entire year of postpartum depression. And it's
Mm.
probably a year of my life that I don't want to remember because I did some silly things, girl. you know, but
Mm.
um, even when I was going through postpartum depression and I couldn't seem to get through it and to get over it, I still thought that I was going to win. I was like, I don't know
Mm.
what this season is and why I'm having this rough season, but I can't wait to come out of it because I am going to win, and that is just a mentality that I've always had with me from being an athlete.
No, I absolutely love that. And in fact, I want everybody who's watching to type that in the comments. I am going to win because I think that mentality, when we're talking about mental health, that's such a pivotal key. Like this moment is temporary. No matter what's going on, that moment is temporary. And that is a powerful mindset to keep in mind. Like, oh, I'm struggling. I don't have the money, or I lost the job, or I didn't get the promotion, or whatever your struggle is at the moment. Like, this isn't the end. I get to play again on Sunday. And I think I love that. I'm going to start incorporating I get to play again on Sunday, because it's such a powerful view of, hey, I lost that. And I think so many people get caught up in the now that it's hard to see past. Okay, after the interviews, after the lights go out, after this game, we have another one, and I have to prepare for the next game. And I do think that's a really progressive mindset that will really help people. Now, I want to go back a little bit. You talked about the postpartum.
Oh,
That's something that a lot of people don't talk about because, especially as a mom, when you're experiencing it, sometimes it can feel like, oh my gosh, so much. Like emotionally, just it's very draining. Sometimes it can feel like I'm not being a good mom, or I'm not, whatever. Tell me the how you utilized your support system during that time, and how you were able to kind of work through and navigate through that time?
I will tell you, for me, postpartum just felt like an overwhelming sense of loss. Like I had
Mm.
this beautiful baby that I just had, but I was still mourning the loss of the person I was before I had her. I
Mm.
Because I was in love with Celia, pre-mom Celia. Listen, she was fun. She, pre-mom Celia. I loved who she was. And so when I became a mom, it's coming face to face with the realization that those are two totally different people.
Mm.
And that if I wanted to be a great mom to her, there were some things that I was just going to have to let go. And I kind of struggled with letting those things go. And some of which were things that I dreamed about, all of my life.
Mhm.
And so I think during that year, it was this overwhelming sense of loss. And as I started to work through it, I came to the realization, with the help of my great aunt, to be honest, my great aunt Bibba was what we call her. Her name is Arvira Kirkwood. I would call her on the phone and I would just say, what am I going to do with this baby? Like, how? And she would
Right.
you're going to do what the rest of us have done. You're going to raise her. And whatever is feeling like you're feeling that you lost, you're going to have again. She's not going to be an infant forever. She's not going to be a toddler forever. She's not going to be in your house forever. And she put it into perspective. You're 24 years old. When she leaves to go to college, you'll be 43. Whatever it is that you wanted to do at 24, you can probably still do at
Mm.
43. So I think it was coming to the realization that um, this was just a temporary kind of time. Like I wasn't losing everything. Like I wasn't hopeless. So I think for me at the time, I did not have a therapist. And it was just me talking to the other women in my family and watching how other women were navigating life and doing it well, and coming
Mhm.
to the realization that yes, you're going to have to reinvent yourself. And so I started doing that. I started working on reinventing myself. And then lo and behold, the person I became, I liked a lot more than the person that I had to get.
Oh, I love it.
So I love post baby Celia a lot more than I love the Celia who I was before I had her. Like I love who I am today. And without Gabrielle, I don't know if I could have gotten to this place.
Yeah. I am so happy you said that, because I don't think enough people talk about that loss of the life you had before children. And even though we love our kids with
Mhm.
all of us, right? With we will do whatever we they are just little miracles and all of the beautiful things. There is still a major shift in life. And I remember telling people when they would say, um, I can't imagine my life without them. And I would say, I actually remember my life pretty well before I had a baby, and I really liked that life.
I remember Saturdays when I was not on the soccer field. I remember
Right.
those.
Like I remember, and now I don't ever want to experience life moving forward without her.
Mhm.
But I would say, no, no, like I I wasn't unhappy in life. I enjoyed that part of life. But I do think there is a part of parenting that we don't talk about where you do have to give up a lot to if you want to be a good parent, if you want to
Mhm.
really raise a healthy, emotionally healthy child. You do have to do things a little bit differently, and you have to give up some things. And so I'm glad you brought that out. And I also love the way your family was able to put that into perspective.
It is
um,
I would just like to say, being a mom is a host of beautiful sacrifices. It is just a host of beautiful sacrifices. I sacrificed buying a home for years because we lived in a place where the best education she could get was a private school education. And so I had to decide, are we going to live in this 2-bedroom apartment and pay for private school? Or am I going to buy this house, have a mortgage, and send her to public school? And
Mm.
presented with those two scenarios, my value was on education. So I chose to rent a small apartment and to send her to private school, but now I own a home, so it wasn't that I wasn't going to have the opportunity to buy a home. It's just that in that moment, that was the sacrifice I had to make for her
Mhm.
because she didn't ask to be here. And it is my job, as her mother, to be sure that the experience that she has in her childhood sets the foundation for her to be an outstanding adult.
So I want to know, it, as the person sending their child to private school in the two-bedroom apartment,
Mhm.
um, was there ever pressure from you to feel like, let me see how I want to ask the question. Like, we maybe you didn't have what her friends had, going to the birthday party, and they are going to the house with the pool with this and that. Was there ever any pressure, and if so, how did you deal with that?
No, I have never tried to keep up with the Joneses. And
Good.
whatever space that I went into, I brought the perspective that I lived. I wasn't trying to assimilate. I wasn't trying to attend church with them. I was still going to go to the church on my side of town. We were there strictly for the educational component. Um, Now, we had lots of friends. I will tell you this, a lot of people talk about the horror stories that they have in private school. And while I do think to a great degree, a lot of those are true, people don't often talk about the amazing people you meet along the way. Like we have had throughout her private school career, we have had families embrace us just because they wanted to embrace us, just because they
Mhm.
liked us, and did they have 10 times the amount that we had? Yes, but they never treated my daughter any
Mhm.
differently. And then believe it or not, our house kind of became the place where they all like to come. They would come to my house and everybody would pile into the living room. I taught them how to play double dutch outside. We drew hopscotch on the
Mm.
sidewalks and those kind of things. And they all wanted to come to my house. And I would say, but you got this huge pool and a trampoline at her house. But listen, people are just, there are lots of people in the world who just want genuine human connection.
Mhm.
There are lots of people out there who do not care where
Yeah.
you live, what size house you live in, and all of those kind
Mhm.
of things. And I have met a lot of those people along the way, So we just never really had any pressure to be anything but who we are.
And again, I'm appreciating all the nuggets that you're dropping, and I hope people are catching them as you're dropping them. What I just heard you say was, number one, people love authenticity,
Hmm.
and number two, there is really a lot of power in just being able to show up as yourself. And you talked about that confidence, and I think that's the beautiful thing about, that's true confidence to me. True confidence is not I have to have it together. True confidence is I'm going to be me and celebrate who I am in this space. And that's what it sounds like you guys did. And you instilled that into your child as well. So she didn't feel a sense of inferiority. It was, no, we live in this apartment, but that's just where we live. It wasn't any type of indictment against her or her character. And I love the fact that you were able to do that um, in such a beautiful way. So I think that's really powerful. And I hope people are picking up on, just show up as yourself, continuing to grow, of course, but at the same time, not feeling that sense of comparison, because that's a thief of joy, number one. But also, it's a huge stressor for so many people. And they come into my office, you know, um, stressed out because they don't feel like they can hit all of these milestones that they've put in their mind and all of that. So I think that was really powerful and beautiful.
And I'll also say, just to tag on to the end of that, I showed up in these spaces authentically who I am. And I also allow for people to be authentically who they were.
Mm.
I wasn't going into a space and demanding that that space adhere to to my particular circumstances. At one particular school, I was probably one of the only single mothers, and they would have practice times that I just couldn't get to as a working mom. But as
Mm.
opposed to marching into the principal's office and saying, we need to change this practice because there are people who can't get here, I just leaned on the network. Who is
Mm.
that stay at home mom that I know that would happily take my daughter, and then what can I do for her in exchange
Right, right.
doing that for me? So I learned to navigate those spaces, um, but to stay authentic, but to also allow other people to be authentic as well. I think the other example I can give you is they were having a father daughter dance, and we had another single mom in the school who called me on the phone, and she was so upset. And she
Mm.
was just like, why would they have a father daughter dance? Everybody doesn't have a father. And she was really, really angry, and she wanted me to kind of join her cause. And I just said to her, you know, but there's a whole school of little girls who do have fathers, and we can't rob them of their moment because our girls don't fit into that box. My plan is just to find somebody to take Gabrielle.
Mm.
Whether it's her godfather, whether it's an uncle, whether it's my best friend who happens to be a guy, I'm just going to have someone take her, you know. So I think part of surviving in that space is being authentically yourself, but also allowing that
Mhm.
space to be authentically what it is.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now you mentioned, having someone else to step up for Gabrielle, and then you talked about leaning into your network.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those are very powerful ideas, and sometimes we always look at what we don't have as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to what we do. I was raised by a single mom as well, and the whole thing was I always said, I had an uncle that would do whatever, or a grandfather, or somebody in my circle that was
Mm-hmm.
going to make sure that I had positive male interactions, and I had all of those things. And so sometimes that could bring some mental struggle for people when they start looking or focusing on what I don't have as opposed to
What you do.
that network. I can't get off from work, but sister so and so can get off from work, and she agreed to take my child. And so let's make that happen. So I think that is, again, one of those mental health strategies that people forget about by utilizing and building a strong support system and network.
And I would also just like to add, and this is a concept that I don't know that if a lot of people think about, or even if it's a concept of all. This is from Celia Anderson School of Thought. I have always taken the approach with Gabrielle that I wanted her to be healthy in the long run.
Mhm.
So, what I chose to do right now was going to determine her mental health in the long run. For example, when she was younger, there wasn't a Christmas that she didn't have a gift under the tree that said, to Gabby from dad. Whether he sent
Mhm.
it or not, there was always going to be a gift under the tree for him, because I did not want my daughter to associate Christmases with lack. Like, as an adult, there are
Mhm.
lots of people who hate Christmas time, and they don't realize that it's tied to their childhood. And so for me, it was less about trying to prove a point about what he should or shouldn't do, and more about my daughter's mental health. And I felt
Mhm.
anything else if I felt that if I did anything else in that moment, in my opinion, it was child abuse. I know that's an extreme statement to make, but I didn't want to abuse my child for the sake of proving a
Ooh,
point.
we
Um,
just got to pause right there. You have to pause because I think so many people don't hear that. Say that one more time.
I did not want to abuse my child for the sake of proving a point.
It's so powerful. Yeah.
And so, like, I tell her all the time, her relationship with her dad is her own. It's her
Mhm.
own. She's got to take control of that, and whatever that she wants that to look like, that's up to her. but he's still your dad. And there's nothing you can do about that. So now that she's 19, I'm like, that's your relationship. Like, I don't offer any narrative around who I think he is, because that's not my place. So
So talk about, and I know we don't have much time, but how were you able to get to that place emotionally where I feel like I have a great relationship with my child's father and all of that. But how were you able to get to that place emotionally where you were able to release any negative narrative for yourself as far as giving that to your child?
yeah, I don't know that you release the narrative. You just kind of keep it to yourself, and you don't share
Mm.
it with your child. You don't share it with your child. That's the most important thing. But for me, my focus has just been on me and my life and my daughter. Like, I just don't have time, to be honest. I don't think about that at all. And I know that is bad for me to say, but I just don't think about it at all. If child support comes, it comes. If it doesn't, oh well. But my philosophy is, it doesn't matter my circumstance, I'm gonna win. So whether you want to be here or not, we're gonna win. We're still going to
Mhm.
Harvard. We're still going to go. We're still going to do everything it is that we want to do, whether you want to be a part of it or not. So I don't really consider what he should or shouldn't be doing anymore.
No, I agree 100%. And I think that's so important. Like your mindset was, let's just find the win.
Let's just figure
Let's
out how to make it happen.
let's get that W.
Let's play the cards that I have in my hand and
Mhm.
not try to wish that I had someone else's cards, or, let's just play
Mhm.
the cards I have and let's play them to the best of my ability.
No, I again, I think that's 100% healthy. Like we can't change certain things. It's just impossible, and people get stuck. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay,
Okay, you
I
came back.
lost you there for a second. Okay. Yeah, I was just saying people get stuck when we're trying to shift our actual reality as opposed to just saying this is what life has given me. And because if you can play spades, it's not always about the cards you have in your hand. You know,
Sometimes you just gotta have a different strategy.
you just have to look at the strategy, and I think that's from life that you can learn that in athletics. Even if you didn't have an athletic background, I think that's still a mentality that can be developed. Hey, these are the things that I have, and how do I win with that? So again, I think that's very powerful. Any parting words for parents who may be struggling with their own mental health, or saying, I just want to find out how I can raise a child who is mentally strong? Any like parting words that you would give for those two areas?
The best thing that I will tell parents is, respond to mental health struggles differently. I know, it doesn't matter how people have responded in the past, just try to respond in a different way. Like, if your go to has been, man, I'm stressed, I need to have a glass of wine. Okay, if you like to do that kind of thing, but, and because I drink my wine too, don't get me wrong, but if that's what you've been doing for the past 5 years and you are still having the same stressors, try something different.
Mm-hmm.
Try to respond to your stress until you find out what that thing is that works. It took me a whole lot of things to go through before I found hot yoga. I even tried boxing. I thought boxing was going to do it for me, but then it didn't work either. But before I found hot yoga, I tried a whole lot of things. So try to respond to your stress in different ways. And then the second thing I'll tell you, as a parent, you have to realize that whatever environment you put your kid in, it will be speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to determine what that environment is saying. How do you do that? You pay attention to the people. The people will always tell the story. And so, after you figure out what that environment is saying, then you have to determine whether that's an environment you want your kid in. For example, for a particular school that we went to, I started going to the high school, football games, and I noticed that the black girls who had been at that school all their lives, by 12th grade, their makeup was three shades too light. Their
Mm,
hair, they had tried to dye it blonde, or
mm,
there was there was just nothing authentically black left about their appearance. And so, because I paid attention to the people, that told me what the environment was saying. And
wow.
I knew that I didn't want my daughter to become that. So pay attention to environment, even if it's even if you're picking a sporting team for your kid, whether it is a AAU team, a college team, or whatever. Pay attention to the environment, and how you know what the environment is saying is by looking at the people, and then decide if that is something you want your child to be a part of, because you're not going to be with them 24 hours a day. They're going to spend more time and influenced by things that are outside of your control than they will things that are
Mm,
inside of your control. So look at the environments. Gabrielle went to boarding school her 11th and 12th grade year because she needed a change of environment, because the environment was starting to speak louder to her.
mm.
I was. So, as opposed to staying in that situation and going head to head, I was just like, I just need to find an environment that speaks the excellence that I want her to have.
Oh no, I absolutely love that. I was thinking as you were talking about the high school situation. I remember when my child was probably 2. She was in a daycare for a couple hours until my mom would pick her up, and she started talking about she wanted long straight hair,
Oh, mm-hmm.
and hmm, okay. So we moved, and I was very intentional about when I was finding the daycare, um, really intentional that there were other students with curly hair, and there were teachers, and I actually found a black owned daycare that was filled with little chocolate and just really just diversity. But she came in, and I remember the day she said, "Mommy, I want a big puff ball like Kennedy." And I was smiling, so I was like, "Yes, you do want a big puff ball like Kennedy, honey."
Kennedy.
And I was like, "Shout out to Kennedy and her puff ball."
Shout
And so it was just, and I had hair that was natural. I still have hair that's natural. Uh, but it was just, it was something about her seeing other people that looked like her, that were really smart, and that were doing all of those things. And so I think that's really such a powerful message, because it's one of those things that people don't always understand either. The messaging that people get at such a young age. I didn't even think
out.
that she would be paying attention to um, that until she started saying, "I want long, straight hair."
The environment will speak to them. It will speak to them, and it also helps shape who they will become. So I had two requirements of any environment that my daughter was in: is A, it had a spirit of excellence, and then B, it had a spirit of black female excellence.
Mm,
And those are two very different things. And I've tried some environments where I've gotten one and I haven't gotten the other, and it took me a while to find environments where you could get both of them, but I succeeded in that. And in saying that, I would also like to say that I always rented, because where I lived was going to be determined on where Gabby went to school. And if I didn't like that school, I was not above moving into another district.
so again, just another
Mhm.
example of, I had to make sacrifices and be intentional about the life that I wanted to create for my child. And I think we have to do that for ourselves as well. We have to be intentional about the life that we want, and not to be afraid to go to an area that is not as familiar, or to step out of our comfort zone and build new networks and build new support systems. So again, thank you so much. You gave a lot of knowledge, and I was, when I first had this, I was like, I want Celia. I don't know how or when, and we tried. I think during the Final Four,
Mhm.
you were busy doing all of those things. I was like, I hope she don't think I'm forgetting, because we're coming back to this.
Thank you for having me. It was
So
fun. I'll come
again,
back
thank you so
anytime.
much. The broadcast is every Thursday. So everybody, give a shout out to Celia Anderson for coming, the amazing Celia, author, senior director, amazing mom, all those great things. You deserve your flowers. And so thank you so much. Join us next week, next Thursday. We will be back here, minding my mental health, talking to another guest about how we can manage our mental health in a healthy way. We are tearing down the stigma of mental health one episode at a time. Thank you, Celia. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next Thursday. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.